Hello and welcome to the Wisping Hour. I'm your ghoul next door. My name is Sheri,
Tipsy.
and today we're going to be talking about stories. Basically, we're going to tell each other stories. And so in this case, right now the leaves are about to start changing. There's a bite in the morning air, and pumpkin spice lattes have been added to the menu of your favorite coffee shop. So grab a drink, cover yourself with a blanket, and prepare yourself. So today's episode is all about creepypastas. For those of you that don't know, creepypasta is essentially a made up story. It's oftentimes about the occult or spooky themes that people have crafted and shared on various internet forums like Reddit, and then they get shared and reshared multiple times. And so today we're going to be telling each other stories for Halloween. So
I'm
how was your week?
pretty good. I'm trying to stay into character, but I just can't.
It's all good.
Supposed to be supposed to be so sleepy. Well, didn't do much this week. Just worked and yeah, yeah, took a trip with my granddad into for an appointment, for a doctor's appointment.
Okay. Yeah, it was a pretty low key week for me too, just working and whatnot. I did end up finishing watching the Werewolves Within movie, so I definitely liked it. Yeah, for sure. So
Good.
it's some lighthearted fun. So if you like your werewolf movies, this is definitely a more broad comedic flair to it. I did notice that they had werewolves on there too, which I definitely want to see next. So it is this was one that just recently, kind of recently came out, or at least in last year. It had Frank Grillo in it, and it was about like I think a double moon that brings out and makes people change. Like it's a werewolf epidemic kind of a thing.
What's that called?
It's just called Werewolves,
Werewolves. Oh, okay.
and it's on Hulu, so I'll be watching that one next for sure.
Cool, cool.
This week, yesterday, my husband and I went and saw Good Fortune with Keanu Reeves. That was fun.
Was it good?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've been seeing advertisements and commercials for it. So
yeah.
it looked
Def
like a good movie.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely funny. So I liked it. It was also had a lot of heart to it. So overall, it was really good, and it was fun watching Keanu act in a more of a lighthearted way. Of
Right.
course, I
Not so serious.
not so serious. Yeah, like of course, I definitely enjoy him in John Wick and all that, and I really hope he does a kung fu. But if that will
Oh
ever
my
get off the
gosh,
ground,
yes.
yes, I would love that. But yeah, this was great. Kind of reminded me of his Bill and Ted days.
Right. Was there a little bit of like a did you ever see Dogma
Oh, I love
with
Dogma.
Jay and yeah, and
It
Silent
was
Bob?
hilarious.
Was it similar to that and in the same kind of maybe context or realm? Because that's what I've
No,
been like. I'm like, oh my gosh, it kind of reminds me of Dogma.
yeah, no, not quite. It was more serious than that. It just
Okay.
had like the comedy
But
came from like
there
the
was
lines more than
okay.
anything.
Dry
Yeah.
humor.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
yeah. When I was in the military, that's whenever I saw Dogma. And in fact, the person that I saw Dogma with was a Quaker. So that was the Quaker friend that I told you about, the coworker. He was a Quaker.
Damn.
And it
That's
was
hilarious.
yes, the movie is hilarious,
Awesome.
still great. But at the end of the movie, when when we got out, he was like, he didn't know how he felt about the movie after.
He probably had all sorts of emotion. My
Yep.
gosh. That's hilarious. That is yeah, I don't know if that'd be one I'd
Well,
take take a Mormon friend to even.
yeah, it was even funnier. Well, because when I was like, "Hey, I want to see this movie," I was just trying to not go
Right.
alone, kind of a thing. At this time, I didn't realize this about him, so I was just like,
So this was a revelation after the fact.
"Yep."
Oh, bless your heart. So you were just as much of a victim as he was.
But yeah,
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Oh.
but
Well, what do we have in store today?
well, today I've got a couple of stories. I will start off with a creepypasta that's called Afraid of the Dark. All right. And so here we go. So when I woke up, I only recognized the growing sense of thirst from within my dehydrated body. I licked my parched lips and slipped out of the covers, my body suddenly hit by the cold air stitched into the seams of the oppressive darkness ahead. I quivered as I reluctantly embraced the chill temperature and made my way to the door, jumping with each step as small creaks were produced from the weight of my foot being placed upon the oak floorboards. Although the noises were faint, it sounded deafeningly loud in contrast to the dead silence surrounding my petite self. All five of my fingers curled around the bronze colored door handle ahead, and they steadily turned it until a small click was heard. I then placed my tiny hand against the wooden door coated in a fine layer of white paint. And with a gentle push, the barrier between the safe haven of a child's bedroom and whatever lay beyond was removed. I shivered as a new draft of icy air entered the room. A brand new wave of darkness seemed to rush forward through the doorway and engulf the area, its color resembling that of tar. Summoning all the courage I could, I placed both feet firmly on the beige carpet that embellished the ground. My eyes glared at the corridor before me. It appeared lengthier at night than during the day. I could imagine elongated arms melting from the walls on both sides, grasping at my clothing. I could envision dozens of spiders dropping from the ceiling, several landing on my hair, and others crawling on the surface of my body. Shaking my head, I banished such thoughts and proceeded down the hallway. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I walked past the room where my parents soundly rested in their comfortable bed. There was no turning back, and even if I wanted to, my craving for a drink to sedate my ever growing dehydration only grew. I carried on still, finally reaching the end of the endless path and found myself in a clearing. By then, my eyes had grown somewhat accustomed to the dark, and I could make out a few pieces of furniture and a television set. I slowed my pace and gulped nervously. A sense of peril entrenched the room. I found that shadows would dance in the corner of my eyes, only to disappear once I turned my head in that direction. The darkness seemed even more foreboding than it had just seconds earlier. I desperately wished to run to my parents like I had so many times before. Still, I remembered how they always told me there was nothing to be afraid of. They explained numerous times that my young imagination would always come up with ways to scare me, but I had to learn to be brave and overcome the fear I would often encounter at the hands of my own mind. Thus, my mind was set on proving to my mother and father that I wasn't afraid anymore, and so I carried on. I confidently walked forward, repeating what my parents had said in my thoughts with each stride. After taking a few steps, I heard it. From behind me, I could make out the sound of footsteps, their rhythm conflicting with my own. As I stopped, so did they. My heart began beating faster than before. Had it been my mind playing tricks on me again? I resumed my steady pace, and this time the only footsteps I could hear were my own. As I neared the kitchen, I found myself standing completely still once more. Figures and shapes yet again found themselves located in the corners of my eyes. I attempted to take a few deep breaths in order to calm down. It was just my imagination, right? I tried my hardest to assure myself of that, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I doubted it. And that growing sense of fear showed as I walked even faster. I kept my eyes focused ahead, not daring to look behind me for even a second. The offbeat footsteps returned once again, and I responded by going even faster. I felt the wind start to pick up and brush by my face as I realized how quickly I was moving. I was certain that my imagination was causing me to hear the footsteps on my trail and the forms appearing in the corner of my eyes. I was aware that my imagination was the reason behind my deepest, darkest fears, which were beginning to make their presence known within my soul. I knew for a fact that only my imagination could make my heart beat the way it did and soak my palms in a thin layer of sweat. My parents would never lie to me, would they? Regardless of what I knew to be true or not, I was close to arriving at my destination. I began a full sprint as I felt the darkness clutching at my ankles and arms. I could hear the footsteps aimlessly walking around, and more illusions of figures accompanied them. I had one hell of an imagination, and I had one thought racing through my mind. I needed to find a light switch. I was desperate for light that would illuminate my surroundings, driving back the treacherous night and whatever creatures lived within it, their sole purpose in life to capture me and munch on my bones. I was so close, just a few feet away. I leaped forward and pushed a small lever upwards, soaking me in the area in a warm, much appreciated glow. I sighed deeply, relieved to be out of danger at last. However, before I could even move, my heart stopped and my eyes widened. Behind me, I heard a voice most unfamiliar. It was guttural and moist, and it echoed throughout the entire house. Finally, I can see you. I flicked off the lights before letting out a shrill cry. I dashed through the darkness, through the living rooms, the hallway, all the way to my parents' room. I can't be certain. I swear I could hear the faint sounds of childish giggling from behind me. My parents were frustrated that I had awoken them, but I didn't care in the slightest. I clung to my mother, sobbing into her chest. My father didn't find anything in the house. He searched every nook and cranny of the place, only to confirm his suspicions that we were the sole occupants. My parents let me sleep with them that night. I knew that no matter what I said, they would simply chalk my experience up to being a consequence of a hyperactive mind. But I knew there was something with me. I knew beyond any doubt that the breathing I felt on the back of my neck and that deep, perverted voice was all real. Looking back, I feel almost silly that I was afraid of the dark. We were never afraid of the dark. Rather, it was what was in it that petrified us to our very core. It was the knowledge that the only thing separating us from a potentially cruel, twisted fate was a thin veil of darkness surrounding us.
My gosh. Okay, can I just say that was very beautifully written
Yes.
and you produced it out soundly. It was like peanut butter. That was one when I worked at a Chase Bank. We had a little guy in a cubicle next to me, and that was the title he got for like the month or something. It was a velvety peanut buttery voice. But yeah, that was beautifully written, but it kind of made me giggle because they have like the author has to be, probably like 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, maybe 10,
Yeah.
and yet is such greatly detailed and so elegant words,
Yeah,
eloquent
that's the
words
one
used.
thing. Yeah, that was the one thing that I definitely really enjoyed about that. It was just how descriptive it was. Like you got a very
Yes,
clear picture of what was
of what was
like
going on.
going on in the mind of the child. And I'm like, and I think that like as I was reading, I was like, yeah, I can relate to, definitely relate to that. I remember as younger, I was afraid of the dark. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was me, 100%. The whole time you were talking, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I'd be doing that too, yep." Anyhow, well, I'm all dolled up for my story, which is on the creepypasta Russian sleep experiments, which I
Okay.
think everybody has had some sort of I think everybody's came across this story at some point because it seems pretty popular.
Yeah. Well, I
One
saw
of
the
those that
title. Yeah. I saw the title and looking for it. There's a number of like super popular ones, but I didn't read anything about it. So I'm definitely excited to hear.
well, this starts in the late 1940s is when this is supposedly taken place. Just as a disclosure, Uh, it has not been proven a hoax nor factual. So there's just not enough evidence to claim that it's fully a hoax or fully not. But anyhow, continuing on, Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using experimental gas based on a stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, but since it was a toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed circuit cameras, so they only had microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole sized windows. So you're talking something about 5 inches thick is going to be about that.
Oh, wow.
I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah, it's going to be about that. And then a port window like on a ship
Right.
would be
Yeah.
round.
Envision. Yeah. Envision like a battleship or something, like something like that.
Right. And that was all they had to actually sit there and watch them and monitor them. So the chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water, and a toilet, and enough dried food to last all five for over a month. So they had plenty to eat for just this 15-day experiment. Here's the kicker, though. The prisoners were actually political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. So everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and didn't sleep for 30 days. Right.
I
Now,
think
granted,
like I was gonna say, I think that like there's a certain point where you can actually go crazy from
oh
lack
yeah,
of
sleep
sleep and all
deprivation.
that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, it messes with your thyroid and everything when you go that long. So they submitted the test and did not sleep for 30 days, which was what was the contract for. But of course, for these experiments, they only lasted 15 days. So you can only imagine they were like, oh, we got to stop this. We can't go a full 30. Their activities were monitored. It was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and general tone of their conversations would take darker aspects after the day 4 marker. On 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and the events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They
Mm,
stopped talking to each other. They began alternately whispering to the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all did seem to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades and
oh my
other
gosh.
subjects in captivity with them. So there's that. And at first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas. 9 days hits, and the first of them starts screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The
Ugh.
researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. And the most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, how they didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started screaming. Remember, there's only 5 of them.
Right.
The 2 non screaming captives started to scream. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes, and then the screaming promptly stopped.
Okay.
So they basically paper mache'd the portholes. So the experimenters could no longer see inside. And as soon as they completed the last one, apparently all the screaming stopped. So this also included the whispering. Like they stopped whispering into the microphones, everything. They just went completely mute.
So totally silent.
So totally silent. They had nothing for 3 more days. The researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 4th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives that they were afraid were either dead or vegetables at this point. And this is only on the 14th day. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door, lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response: "We no longer want to be freed." So debate
Okay.
broke out amongst the researchers and the military forces funding this research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas, filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of a loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them in life. Excuse me, I broke out. They couldn't rightly call the state of what they were in life, like lively. The food rations past day 5 hadn't even been touched. There was chunks of meat
No.
from the dead test subject's thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain, allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their own bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers had initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They'd just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around this eviscerated but still living bodies of these subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of the days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off. And an artery in his leg was severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle of one of the 4 living subjects, he had his spleen ruptured and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs of one of the doctors. When his heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he'd bled out to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood, even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word more over and over, weaker and weaker until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. 2 with intact vocal cords, continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. Most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had, and in the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back into his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative that they'd given him to prepare him for surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints. When the anesthetic gas was brought out to him to put him under, he managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding that wrist as well. It took little more than anesthesia than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test, the subject died on the operating table. It was found that his blood had tripled the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he'd broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles that he had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery. He only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly that they try the surgery without anesthetic, and he did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that
Mm.
it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. Although one terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers.
Mm.
Creepy.
Yeah.
The surgery ended with the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message, and it was simple: keep cutting. The other two test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthesia as well. Although they'd been injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation, the surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. One paralyzed the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds again. The moment they could speak, they were asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves and why they'd ripped out their own guts and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All three test subjects' restraints were reinforced and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of the military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, a former KGB agent, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they put the gas back on him. So, even though the researchers strongly objected, they were overruled. Of course, it's all in the name of science.
Right?
Right. In preparation for being sealed into the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all three stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point, all three were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again for something to focus on. The remaining
Mm.
subject was holding his head up off his pillow, blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for an EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brain waves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as though he were repeatedly suffering from brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped.
Mm.
The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside as well as three researchers. One of the named three immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes.
He's
Then
like,
turned the gun on
nope.
the mute and blew his brains out as well. Oh, my lord. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you. He screamed at the man strapped to the table. What are you? He demanded. I must know. And the subject smiled. Have you forgotten so easily? The subject asked. We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out, so nearly free. Whilst there are a number of images associated with the Russian sleep experiment, and the story is of an event rather than about an individual or character, there is one image that is most well known and commonly linked to the story, which most fans will instantly recognize. The image shows a humanoid creature staring blankly into a camera. The figure is horribly emaciated, a fact that is further emphasized by the extent to which the eyes are sunken back into the sockets, brow and cheekbones protruding to an unnatural extent. The teeth, meanwhile, are of an unusually large size and forced forward by the thinness of the subject into a maniacal looking grin. The
Mm.
subject's exaggerated features, enlarged head, and huddled position, first with the concept of them being as much as a victim as a threat. The image is in black and white, which lends some authenticity considering the period in which it was alleged to be taken. Thankfully, the image is a fake. Rather than being a human being, it is in fact a photograph of a Halloween prop named Spasm, created in 2005 by Morbid Enterprises. Um, Says there was some disagreement as to where the story first originated. While some sources claim that the tale's first appearance can be linked back to a user known only as Orange Soda, who posted the story to the Creepypasta website August 10th, 2010. Others trace its origins to August 09 post by Rip747 WordPress blog, pointing out that the story was also posted to the miscellaneous board of bodybuilding forums by a user named Falcon Punch on August 20th of '09, which would again predate Orange Soda's post on Creepypasta. It's also to be noted that Rip747's blog claimed that the story had been shared with him by his brother. And whilst this might be just a narrative device intended to distance the author from the piece, it could also be regarded as evidence that the story existed prior to the post. Some believe the British author Ice to have written the original creepypasta based upon the fact that she produced a book of the same name. She clarified that it was simply an inspired work and was not the myth's originator. So, yep, they've got a
Oh,
bunch of creepy black and white images that all link to this story, but it's that
yeah.
picture's false. So, as far as the story goes, that's pretty detailed to just have been, you know, just out
Yeah.
there.
That was a little bit disgusting. Yeah.
Just a touch.
Just a touch. Like, yeah. I didn't know what the whole story was about. Like I said, I only saw the title. But that was I don't know, that was interesting.
I could see the Russians doing something like that.
I
That's a sad
could
thing. Like
yeah.
we're as human beings, we're capable of anything.
Mhm.
Gruesome atrocities
Yeah,
in
like
tow.
really,
But
yeah, like in the name of experimentation, yeah,
right.
humanity can do some gruesome things for sure. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some, essentially sleep deprivation experiments. That really wouldn't surprise me at all. But, and maybe when the mind breaks, you might do some of those things. I don't know. It's wild.
Yeah. It's like hypothermia. There's like a breaking point, and then
Yeah.
it's, whether you come back out of that or not is usually not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyhow,
Alrighty. Well, I've
that's all
got
I
just a
got.
little bit. Yeah. I have another full story, but actually I have another snippet of something I wanted to bring up. So my other things are a little bit more lighter than that, we'll just say. Yeah. But there was this one thing that basically it was I was looking at some Facebook reels. So lately, for whatever reason, I've been getting a lot of like reels where someone will have like they're leaving a voicemail, they'll be leaving a message for somebody, and it's
Yeah.
usually about locations like being at the zoo or being at a gas station or just being somewhere where there aren't other people at that time. And so the one that came out that I actually enjoyed the most of those was the premise is that you're a new hire at a gas station. And so they get left a voicemail with some rules that you need to follow at the gas station.
It's kind of like Five Nights at Freddy's.
Well, in this particular instance, it is a gas station that you have the rules for. But maybe, yeah, a little bit Five Nights at Freddy in the sense of like the isolation in that regard. But so this was the end. So this
Good
was what the
graveyard shift.
yeah, yeah. So this was the message they get left for the new hire. And it goes, "Congratulations, you've been," and I should say it's this woman's voice saying this. So it goes, "Congratulations, you've been hired at a lonely gas station. Rule number 1: if someone comes in with coins that feel ice cold, don't give them change. Drop the coins in the red box under the counter. Don't look at their face. Rule number 2. At 1:47 a.m., the outside light may flicker. Do not go outside until they stop. If someone knocks on the glass during the flicker, ignore it. I like how I'd say ignore it, not them.
Ignore
Rule
it.
number right. Rule number 3. Check the bathrooms every 2 hours. If the mirror is fogged, leave it. Do not wipe it. The figure you'll see isn't you. Rule number 4. If a black pickup parks by pump 3 but no one gets out, keep your eyes on the clock. If the truck stays past 2:30 a.m., shut off all the lights and hide behind the counter until you hear it drive away. Rule number 5. If the radio behind the register turns off on by itself and plays static, unplug it immediately. If you don't, it will start speaking your name. That's all. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I said Five Nights at Freddy's, because when he gets into the security room, he's got a voicemail left on there, and it's a bunch of rules of what to do, like, don't look at the animatronics in the eye. If they
Yeah,
start playing music, just ignore it.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So it's like that then. Yeah. Only this one was
Yeah.
tailored to the gas station. And it sounds like a really terrible place I'd never want to work. But I
Yeah,
thought it
don't
was
think I'd
cool.
wanna work there, especially not with the black truck. Whatever that was about. You're
Yeah.
gonna tell me I have to hide? I'm not prepared.
Yes.
My
Oh
gosh.
man. So yeah, that was just a random thing that I saw that was on Facebook. But I just since we're talking about creepypastas, I felt it was like creepypasta adjacent, just a different medium than reading in a forum. It's more
Right.
visual and audio. But all right. And then the last actual creepypasta I have is called The Boy on the Steps. So it starts off, this was Peter's favorite time of year, late fall. Almost all the leaves had fallen from the trees, and the crisp, cool temperatures made for almost perfect weather for him. Peter was a mailman in a somewhat affluent suburb of the city, doing one of the few remaining runs that still had delivery door to door. He would start at one end of the neighborhood and, at a good work rate, would be able to complete his deliveries before 2 in the afternoon. He enjoyed his work and tried to keep a quick pace, both for the health benefit it provided and to be able to finish his day early. He never saw many people on his run. Those he came across would make like he wasn't there, part of the background, if you will. Peter didn't mind much. He would just smile after trying to make some eye contact and then continue on his way. So it was early one morning, a little bit into the route, when he came across a little boy sitting on the steps of an older house. He may have delivered there 100 times already, if not more. Rarely did he see anyone around that place, but from his vague memory, he recalls he may have come across this boy once or twice. This time seemed different, like he was almost waiting for him. He was no more than 10, a bit pale, with sandy blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and almost no expression on his face. He never took his eyes off Peter as he sat there on the steps, waiting for the mailman to make his delivery. Peter thrust a letter into the boy's outstretched hands and gave him a smile. He continued on his way, oblivious to the boy's eyes as they followed him down the street. The next day was similar, only the boy was at a house further up the street, earlier on his run. Peter went through the motions, putting the envelopes in the boy's hand, and walked towards the next house. Although he knew that the boy probably didn't live at the house he found him at, he almost felt compelled to hand him the mail. Every day their little game continued, and every day the boy was waiting at a house further and further up the street. Peter would spot the boy from a distance, and sure enough, there would always be a delivery for the house where the boy sat. There were never any words exchanged between them, but a general uneasiness on Peter's part started to become quite evident every time he approached the steps where the lad sat. Peter started being very anxious about this part of his job. He felt a sense of dread as he would approach the boy and almost be frightened in his presence. Peter could feel that something just wasn't quite right with the whole situation. The next day started like any other, but as he made his way towards the boys' street, he realized that object of his angst would probably be at the first house on the block due to him moving up the street a few houses each day. He turned the corner and was greeted with a makeshift memorial right on the curve. Propped up on the lamppost were flowers, crosses, little stuffed animals, and a few toys. Warily, Peter looked over to the first house, almost shaking. The memorial is for the boy. It must be for the boy, Peter thought. He looked over to the house, half expecting not to see him. The boy, however, was there, sitting on the steps waiting for him. The scene seemed even scarier this time, given Peter's revelation. The boy was looking down at his own feet this time, a few tears visible on his pale cheeks. The mailman reluctantly approached him with his usual letters and put them in his hand. Do you know what happened here? Peter asked the boy. The little boy looked up and nodded, more tears streaming down his cheeks. He pointed to the memorial at the foot of the lamppost and then upwards to a paper taped at about eye level that Peter didn't notice. Even though he couldn't read the words from where he was, he knew what the clipping would say. That's about you, isn't it? Peter asked, his voice almost breaking. He couldn't believe he was speaking with a child who had died tragically at this spot. No, the boy answered, almost in a whisper. It's about both of us. Peter put his head in his hands and sobbed uncontrollably. The memories of the accident came flooding back. The car careening out of control, him trying to push the boy out of the way, the hit and run that disastrously took both their lives. What's your name? Peter asked as he tried to compose himself with this new truth. Michael, said the boy, in a bit of a stronger voice than before. Well, Michael, I think I can finish early today.
Aw.
Peter told him. He put his he put his mailbag down onto the manicured lawn and started walking down the street, leaving the makeshift memorial on the corner behind them. Michael got up off the steps and followed.
So sweet. I like that story. That wasn't a creepy pasta. That was just a sad pasta.
Yeah, it was a little bit of sad pasta. Yeah, yeah. But it was about a ghost. No, two ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah. It was still a good one. Well, those were pretty good. I thought we had some good stories today.
Yeah.
So, what now?
Well, that's all. Yeah, that's all I had. And I think that's all we have. So, our next episode is going to be about. Actually, you go ahead and tell them it's about the movie.
Well, yes, we're doing about The Conjuring, right?
That's right. Yes, we're going to talk
Yes.
about yeah, we're doing the true story of the behind the Conjuring. The facts. That
Yes.
inspired the movies.
Facts. Yes. And
So
I'm going to do a portion about Ed and Lorraine Warren to kind of give you a background as to who's telling us these stories and getting the facts.
yes, yeah, there we go. Yeah, and that's how we're gonna end the spooky month of October.
October.
We had originally were going to try to get together today for the podcast, but due to technical issues, it just wasn't possible. So we might attempt that in the future, but for now, we're filming separately.
Yeah. But you might see me in some more makeup. Who knows?
I haven't decided. I may do something special next weekend with it being the weekend before Halloween. So
I can always come over early before we do the podcast and then just run back home.
there we go. All right, then. Well, that's all we had for you today. Definitely hope you enjoyed yourself. And if you enjoyed yourself, we definitely would love it. You could like and subscribe or leave a comment. We definitely always want to hear about your stories as well. If you want us to talk about anything in particular, definitely talk about that. Also, our email is down at the bottom if you want to send a more direct message. So you can do that as well. So that way we can talk about your stories as well. We'd love to hear them.
Absolutely. Until then, don't follow the whispers into the dark. Stay
All
safe.
right. Yes, definitely stay very safe. Bye bye.
We'll see you next time.